welcome to the award-winning gutter. Yes, it's back. It's back, isn't it, Neil?
It's back.
How excited are we, Sean?
Extremely.
Calm down, Phil. I've told you to be calm about this. It's been, what, 6 weeks?
I'm as excited as Phil.
6 weeks since Liverpool stopped buying players, or something like that. I don't know, maybe it's longer.
Has it been a long 6 weeks for you, Rob?
A hell of a 6 weeks.
You could honestly do one of these.
I've been on Neil's case almost every other day going, can we do a gutter every week? Can we do a gutter every week, Neil? But no, but finally we have a gutter, so I'm going to fucking milk this. Pardon for the swearing to the American audience, so they don't like that. This lovely edition of the non-sweary gutter is brought to you by our fantastic friends at NordVPN. So if you go to nordvpn.com/tour, you'll get a great exclusive deal just for you. Do you like extra internet? Jesus Christ, do you like extra internet security?
I do, Rob, yes.
I thought you did. I heard
Where
that.
can I get it, Rob?
And do you like peace of mind?
All over peace of mind. I mean, I really need peace of mind. I'm probably the person most in need of peace of mind.
NordVPN do it both.
Phenomenal.
Peace of mind and the security.
Yeah, well, I used it when I was in Morocco on holiday, and it was very, very useful. Gave me full peace of mind bouncing around the place. So I was all over NordVPN.
Do you like having the ability to change your virtual location with a click of a button?
I used it in Morocco, so yes, I
So
do.
you obviously do. And obviously, Phil, you like having the idea of a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you will be going
I don't think you'll need it though, Rob.
I don't think you'll need it. Why would you? Because you're going to stick with it. You're going to go to nordvpn.com/TAW to find out more. And to find out more about what's going to happen in the transfer market and the Reds in the forthcoming weeks, months and days and years, we're going to talk about, well, I'll tell you what we're going to first do, Shawnee. We're going to recap on the summer. I love a recap, me. I love a recap. Now, so this is a bit like in the overview show, which I've just done, so I'm actually going to depress myself before I even start. I think, in all seriousness, I think before the first ball was properly kicked, we looked at the body of work on paper. We looked at the signing of the Vertses and the Isakis and the Ekitikes and Frimpong, Marmadashvili, Kirkes, Leone. I think that's listing all the lads. And we thought, we're champions. These are really good players. There's a lot of dough being spent here. The pedigree across the board, the profile across the board is fantastic. We could have an 87, 88 on our hands here. You know, I'm talking about the Barnes-Beardsley era, where that replenished Liverpool, mainly attacking line, hit the ground running and blew everyone away. I think there was a sort of, I wouldn't call it a pipe dream, but a sort of a quasi-realistic fantasy that could happen, but it hasn't.
It hasn't. Lots of mitigation. I think Neil was driving the bus of fast, pacey, wide man. Ideally play both sides, lacking there.
How right he was.
Prioritised other areas. Yeah, I'd like to think I was probably shotgun, or certainly at least collecting the tickets.
I was quietly clapping in the back seat.
Yes, I did think that there might have been something late in the window with Rodrigo from Real Madrid at the time, just with most of the stuff coming out of Spain and his situation there really. But it seems that Liverpool just didn't think they had that big a necessity there, which I think was quite a big risk. When you think of whatever they think internally of Chiesa, you have to look at the manager's use of him last season. Then you have to look at. Everyone talks about the physical specimen that is Mo Salah, but it's very, very difficult to predict injuries some injuries you can do nothing about, but also just when someone might drop off a little bit. And even if that's down to them, it can be down to other factors. Slot and Salah were on record in the second half of last season before the summer and said teams are starting to do different things against us. There's a Salah interview towards the end of the season where he said, Arne Slot and I had a chat and we tweaked a few things and we might need to do that again. There was definitely a sense that they were smelling that they maybe needed to stay one step ahead. I think the big thing on the left side is Cody Gakpo. There's been a huge amount of reliance put on him. He's had the new contract. You've got literally a kid, no matter how talented they are. And when you're doing the contracts with Virgil and Salah, we're not just going for the league, we want to win the Champions League.
I think this Gakpo point's important. I don't want to get quite stuck into the existing squads quite so soon, but the problem is Gakpo was, I wouldn't say he was a luxury player for us in the season gone or the season past, but there was always a sense that he could be a bonus for us because it was Luis Diaz's position to lose at any given stage. Luis Diaz had a level of consistency and a return, quite frankly, which was more than good enough for our needs. Some people wanted a bit more. Some people, like me, thought he was being a bit underrated. But broadly speaking, of all the problems we had, I think no one perceived Luis Diaz as the major one. And Cody Gakpo then had the freedom, I think, to express himself when given Luis Diaz's job, when Luis Diaz was used elsewhere. But now it's all on Cody.
Agreed, and I think you look at Steven Gerrard and David Platt as an example. In Gerrard, you've got output and everything else that they bring. In David Platt, you've got output, and if David Platt doesn't deliver the output, he's not delivering that much. And I think the problem with Cody is you look at him and think he's a huge, strong, powerful guy. And in a world where teams are man-to-man marking Liverpool and pressing Liverpool, you'd think that your outball would be get it in and around Cody Gakpo, because he should dominate physically in every way, every right back going. And when Kieran Trippier is giving Gakpo a hard time, the alarm bells for me start to just ring a little bit. And you take Cody's output at Anfield away, that's a huge amount of reliance on a 65-game season of 100 minutes a game, and pressure on him to stay fit and in form.
I think just let's stay with the new guys. I mean, we can look at the transfer work in terms of the ins and outs. I mean, I've hinted that it may state a bit obvious that we're maybe missing Luis Diaz, linked to the reasons Sean's elucidated there. But we haven't yet, apart from Ekitike, who has genuinely been a bright spark for us. I think he's better than we expect him to be thus far, Phil. For a sense that we've done well in the market this summer, in terms of analysing, we could have done with 1 or 2 more successes. And I know there's mitigation, but there's no hiding the fact that we wouldn't have wanted to be where we are now with the body, in terms of how we were judging the body of the work before a ball was kicked.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But when we have also done a volume of players that is higher than you would expect. Normal, not necessarily expect at the start of summer, but in terms of what a normal summer looks like in terms of how many bodies.
First team players,
we could quite easily put a team out where there's 5 players who didn't play for Liverpool last season starting, maybe 6 if you include the goalkeeper, which is going to be the case for a few weeks now, and that leads itself into cohesion issues in terms of players knowing their exact roles. Like I think there's a world where this might not make sense necessarily this season. In terms of, I think a lot of it is dependent on sort of the Mohamed Salah-less Liverpool, which will come in the next, maximum 2 years, I would say. And the players that have been brought in look more like succession planning for him than necessarily to fit in with him and help him. And that's not to say that they won't do that. I think there's a world where an Ekitike, Salah front three looks excellent towards the end of this season and really works. And that is, I think, what we'll work towards. Then over time, I think that might become a front two, and you play 4 in midfield, and the full backs are the width. And like football evolves all the time in terms of formation. In terms of, you think about the 4-2-3-1 is not the same as a 4-3-3. It's not the same as, ultimately the 4-2-3-1. No, the 4-3-3 of Jurgen Klopp is not a million miles away from the kind of thing that Benitez would have. But when you actually look at it written down, it was very, very, very different.
Yeah,
and that the kind of thing that keeps changing. And I think what we've seen is we've brought players in that will be the next step of change, but it won't automatically immediately work, and it won't necessarily knit together cohesively from the off. And we're just having to live that now.
No, just in private, the rationalists who have made the key decisions about the type of player we wanted to get in the summer. Let's just simplistically say Edwards and Hughes and the manager. That triumvirate. Privately in a huddle now, how do you think they are marking their own work?
So I think that you can't look at the summer decisions without also lumping Van Dijk and Salah into
No,
it.
sure.
No, I think this is an important point. I think that I think they decided that what they wanted to do, in conjunction with the manager will have been part of this decision, was to move forward with Salah and Van Dijk off the basis of the fact that you are going to pay Salah and Van Dijk a great deal of money, and there is no resale value to be had in the future on either of them, possibly. Be interesting to see if that possibly changes around Salah. It won't around Van Dijk at this stage. So I think that this is your first step of that thought process. And then from there, what I think they've wanted to do, and I think all of this is constantly framed by a conversation that is a difficult one to have because of what happens to Jota. So I think that the Jota aspect of this remains really interesting. Like, for instance, would they have bought Ekitike and Isak if what happens to Jota doesn't happen? Would they have gone for one and maybe banked the idea of another one later down the line and then bought another player with pace in wide areas? For instance, would they have gone in a different direction? Because all the rumours were flying around, prior to the accident. So I think that's difficult. I think that what they decided to do post Jota, having committed to Salah and Van Dijk, was that they felt they were in a position to lock down the best, what they viewed for Liverpool for the medium to long term, are the best 2 number 9 options on the market. And they thought they were in a position to get the best 2 number 9 options on the market, and they think they got them both. And say what you want about everything else, in terms of medium-term planning for Liverpool, I think they'll still look back and be of the view this is a success, because we managed to lock down what is the hardest position in football to lock down for the foreseeable future. We've got that boxed off. And then from there, they've maybe had to make a couple of tougher decisions where they might have wanted to go in a different direction pre-accident. They might have prioritised doing Guehi a little earlier, if it wasn't for the fact that they had to put a lot of energy and time, I suspect, into what was going on with Ekitike and Isak. You know, time is a key resource here, along with money as well. I think that what Liverpool have done is, I think, part one of a 2-phase plan to be busy in the market across 3 windows. That was window 1 of it. The next window is the one that is forthcoming, and the third window is the one next summer, and then be quiet in the market for the foreseeable future thereafter, sort of thinking 2 or 3 years. And I think they'll feel, and this sounds like a really weird thing to say off the back of £400 million worth of investment, I think they'll feel as though they've created a really good platform to then work out what they want to do with the next steps in terms of profiles of players. And that's hard for us as supporters, because I think also I want Liverpool to retain the league title, please, and have a really good go at winning the European Cup. That'd be amazing. And I think that there's no reason why Liverpool, with the squad that they've got, can't do that. That's not an excuse or saying that, you know, that's impossible with where they are. But I think they'll feel as though, you know, they can now make informed market-based moves, knowing we've got these certain positions across the pitch locked down. The other one we haven't talked about, because we only got 70 minutes of him, is Leone, who for 70 minutes, you could see exactly why Liverpool had gone for what they'd gone for with him. You know, for me, the question for me that I think is most pressing is Florian Wirtz good? Florian Wirtz is fucking brilliant. Can Alexander Isak score goals in the Premier League? He can. Ekitike, we've seen his quality prior to the mad red card. For me, these aren't the conversations. For me, what I find trickiest to assess is, I find, given the way we've played both fullback signings, to be a little bit confusing. You know, Hato was bouncing around on the market, and if we wanted the sort of left back who wants to sit closer to his centre backs and play the ball from deep, he profiles one that makes a bit more sense to me than Kerkez does. I think with Frimpong and Bradley, I feel as though Frimpong's had hard lines, in that he was injured very, very early when he played perfectly well for 60 minutes against Bournemouth. And it's worth saying, when he goes off against Bournemouth, Liverpool are 2-0 uncomfortable. And Frimpong's got almost everything right. Yeah. Kerkez is having a tough time on the other side, but Frimpong's got everything right. And I think he's found it difficult since coming back. But that said, you've yet to see how this makes a ton of sense. So has the manager just been game to game, just thinking, I'll just get through this period and we'll see how that's gonna sit in later? So for me, the fullbacks are the ones where, if you're talking about where the suits meet the conversation with the tracksuits, that's where I'm a little bit like, is Slot happy with this? Are they happy with the way in which he's using them? Was there a conversation that we would go in a different direction, and so far it's been this, but Slot's sitting around going, lads, I played 6 of the current top 8, we're also in the top 8. Our easiest game's been Burnley away. This has been a tough run, I'm just getting through this and you're going to see the way it goes. And I think, to your point, I think that they will be quite satisfied, but it's where this sort of meeting the minds in terms of recruitment versus literally surviving game by game in what's been a really torrid run.
There was, I think, a perception from a fan point of view, and a justified one, I think the media were buying into it as well, that Liverpool's spending, the sheer weight of it and the sheer profile of target we were going for, Sean, was the club putting its foot down after a title win. It was the club saying, we know we've achieved something incredible, but we know we can be so much better. And our ambitions know no limit. We won the league, we should have won the league and Champions League. And our response to this, because we've been very prudent in the way we've controlled our spending in recent times, how we've worked within the financial strictures in the new era of football regulation, we have assets to sell. We can put a real marker down in the transfer market, and we can break records all over the place, and we can achieve everything. We can future-proof in the way we've discussed, plan for a world without the likes of Mo Salah, but we can win and win now. I'm not yet comfortable with the conversation moving back towards this is a bit transition-y. I agree with you. I think we put ourselves under pressure in a good way, in a ballsy way. We put ourselves under pressure. How would you mark how we're responding to that pressure thus far?
Bloody frustrating when you watch the last week that we've all just had.
Yeah, I suppose that's a loaded question. But
the question you've got, which if you knew the answer, you'd be a billionaire, is when you've got so many footballers out of form, to what extent do you go, that's them being out of form, fitness, rhythm, peak match sharpness? To what extent is that gelling within their little partnerships on a pitch? To what extent is that the overall tactical setup that the manager has a bit of control of? And to what extent of that could be even mental health things going on in the background, whatever, and how Liverpool manage that? Because the spine of Liverpool, if you go Alisson, Virgil, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, granted he's played a bit at right back, and then Hugo up top, that's been one of the big positives of this season. The issue is that virtually everything around that,
the width actually back and front isn't quite right.
And when I think, as with most things in life, the answer's probably a bit of everything there. And you've got the obvious mitigation for loads of players in terms of the fitness and form and rhythm. I think the manager's got a very big international break now, and probably the next one. This bank of games is going to be really interesting, because I think he's looked at what they've done in 24-25 and gone, we're going to change a few things, but I'd be mad to throw that in the bin and devise something completely brand new. Why would I do that? That would be insane. And when you look at the schedule they've got, it would be even madder to do that, because he's got so limited time on the training ground with them. The problem is that when you drop in a lot of these players, they don't, I think, naturally drop in to get the peak version of them in quite what he did last season. Like Neil was saying, just one quick example, if you say, as an opposition manager, what do I fear from Milos Kerkez? You would go, the last thing I need is him rampaging down the left-hand side, getting around the back of the winger, putting in dangerous crosses between my defence and goalkeeper, maybe pinning my winger back when I want them to try and get down the sides of Virgil and Konaté. If Liverpool then position him here and go, you're going to play rondos with Alisson, Virgil and Grav, I reckon as an opposition manager, I'll take that all day, because not only does it negate his threat, but he might be the dope. And if you look at it, his on-the-ball value, all his stats on the ball, his vertical passing, it's non-existent.
But this is deliberate.
To what extent do you go, he's better than that, but at the same time, is the manager using him in that role? And is he in the right role? And that's where I think Slot's got a decision to make now with such limited time. Do I stick to 24-25 and go, I've got some, in his view, better players here, especially for beating up the weaker sides? Or where does he go, I need to tweak things and get the most out of some of the other players, especially the new signings?
Okay, let's move towards addressing the issue, really, as to whether Liverpool still have gaps in this squad and how they might look to fill those gaps. We've referenced, Neil, you were banging the drum that Liverpool needed an extra forward before the window closed. You were saying you were shotgun on that. I was saying I was on board with that. I could see why they thought they might be able to work with what they had. But what's manifested itself, Phil, I think, as the season's begun is, well, Gakpo's inconsistencies, as Sean has mentioned, or maybe it's just a fact of life of his ongoing passivity. The fact that Luis Diaz's dynamism as an option in wider areas is no longer an option, a possibility. Mo Salah, thus far, has continued the slide we've seen from him during the latter part of last season. So what's screaming out is a lack of pace. And of course, now we haven't seen Alexander Isak, and Alexander Isak is no slouch. And if you've got Isak and Ekitike in tandem, we might look at a different side. Maybe even Frimpong's flying. It might not look quite the issue. But as we stand now, if we could wave a magic wand and go into the market and do bits and improve a position, notwithstanding, we'll come on to the defence, but let's deal with front six for now. There's been a lot of rumours around, say, Antoine Semenyo. Is that the profile of player you think would really solve a few problems for now and make everyone rest a bit easier?
I mean, you said we're standing centre-back. I would have left wing as the number one, regardless of anything.
I would too, but I just want to park that argument for now.
I know some people might disagree, but I think it's the number one area I look at and go, that is where Liverpool can improve.
Totally agree.
For 2-3 years now, I've basically thought Gakpo's a good player, but I don't think he should be starting for Liverpool. I think if he's your fourth best forward, I think you're doing well. There might even be a world where he should probably be with Ekitike and Isak, probably Liverpool's 5th best if you bring in a left winger, which is exactly where I would like to see the player in exactly the position we should be in. I think it is the area where you're looking at it and going, yeah, I would like something. I mean, you think about Diaz. Diaz was a big player for us. I don't necessarily disagree with the decision to offer him the contract or move him on. I think the profile is what we miss in terms of quick, dynamic, hard-working.
Gets us through the thirds.
Good output, gets you up the pitch. It's a miss, I think, in terms of what he offered last season and what isn't there. But at the same time, he did play a lot of time up front and didn't play on the left wing. So it's not quite as simple as that, I don't think. There is, I think a lot is to do with the way the fullbacks are being used in terms of they're not really helping wingers. In terms of, I think Salah's being shut down quite easily because he's not got
nothing running behind his shoulder.
There's no one side running over him. Like I would really like to see Frimpong and Szoboszlai sort of on that side helping him. I think that would make it a little better. It's and then Kerkez, as Sean's just said about in terms of doing what he does. There's a cross he puts in for Hungary the other night. I don't know if you've seen it, but it is absolutely. It's an undefendable cross.
And we've seen him do that.
And we've seen him do it for Bournemouth. There was one I think they scored away at Tottenham last season where he marauders down the left and whips this cross into the back post, and you're just like, well, how do you defend that? And he's not being put in the position to do that. And I would like to see again more of that because he is also quite quick, and dynamic in terms of getting up. And I think that's where we just look a bit passive and a bit slow at times, and that is where I would like us to be better.
I think on Semenyo, I've been a little bit of a Semenyo skeptic, and in a way I sort of still am. Like, is he genuinely absolutely top end last 8 Champions League class? I think that the jury would be out, and he would prove that with his next move, one way or the other. He's at the age now where he does need to make the move, I'd argue, in the next 2 transfer windows in order to be able to get somewhere. All of that said, if you're asking me right now, to your magic wand point, and you said, well, it's not that magical wand, it's Semenyo or no one, I will be Semenyo in my head off. I'll be Semenyo with gusto.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd make a big difference for us, and I think he's in this position where, with Semenyo, I think he, say what you want, week in, week out, having a lad who's physically imposing, unbelievably quick, looks like he enjoys a bit of a scrap, and is happy to get shots away. They're not always the smartest shots in the world, but I wouldn't even be that eager to coach that out of him in the short term, if you know what I mean. Often you say, well, he'll come here and he'll play with better players. I think almost right now, the idea of being able to go, and we've seen literally Bournemouth came to Anfield and did it, that outball, that idea of, right, play him on Kerkez, hit him head, hit him chest, hit him feet, hit him, don't stop hitting him. And I think that right now that'd be no bad thing. And I think having an option like that, even if it becomes a bit of a siege weapon, and even if it was just, unless he really did step up, I think there's nothing. I understand that there's the constant pathway conversation around young players like Rio, but I think if you brought someone like Semenyo in, it's Semenyo and Gakpo. Because at the minute, anyway, it isn't as though I'm looking at this situation and Rio's getting starts. He's not getting starts.
He's not getting minutes.
So,
he's
not going to get minutes. So we know his next game's almost certainly going to be against Palace in the League Cup, for instance. And then his game after that might be FA Cup, or there might be something else. It might be PSV. You might be able to make that argument. But if you've got Semenyo in there, what you're almost able to say to Rio is, your job now is to get ahead of Gakpo. And then we just sell Gakpo, or we repurpose him to play somewhere else as an option for us. And that's the job of the way this is meant to work. I think the idea of, I think you need to be able to say to other young players who you might want, at Liverpool you get tons of opportunities. That's different to the idea of we vacate a complete space and there's onus on you, but there's a manager there whose job is to get results in football matches, who turns around and goes, well, I don't want to pay. And also, there's also then a conversation about, do you want to expose the 17-year-old to games where he's not getting results? A really good example on that one is, it feels, at least in Arsenal supporters' consciousness, Dalman has overtaken Nweri. Nweri got almost 40 appearances last season. And he's only 2 years younger than him, Dalman, but Nweri now is not being thought of because he's come in, had chances and not being able to take them because he wasn't ready and there was too much pressure put on him. So yeah, Semenyo, I think if Liverpool could do it in January, it'd be absolutely perfect. I think there's an argument anyway now with the weight of games. Salah is, and has been, and may continue to be, something quite close to freakish. Salah is now in that sort of category with Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi, where you're not almost talking about the quality, you're almost talking about an unbelievable fitness record where they're just constantly available. I don't think you can say that of Isak. I suspect you're not going to be able to say that of Ekitike. Gakpo's been pretty solid in terms of fitness, but I don't think you can say it of him and freshness. You're playing Swiss system games. You can't hide in the Premier League, especially when you get a run like Liverpool have had for the first 7 and someone make the argument of the first 11 games. We've got 2 massive European games coming up. You know, I think that when you replace Salah, even though I think we've started that process in a tactical sense, you replace him with 2. You want to have 6 quality forwards now. Yeah, and if you want to be a team that can win the Premier League, not fucking League One, the Premier League and the Champions League in the same season, which is what we're all saying we want, you need 6 quality forwards. And that is the trajectory. There's a pair. If you've got a Mo Salah, you can get away. Mo Salah, 27-year-old Mo Salah, you can get away with it. Mo Salah last season, I still think you could have got away with it. Mo Salah this season remains to be seen, but there aren't that many more Mo Salahs. I'd get Semenyo in, and it becomes part of a squad building plan. And if Liverpool could do it, I'd be absolutely delighted.
Alex Crook at TalkSport says Anton Semenyo has a release clause in his Bournemouth contract. Liverpool are big admirers. The exact terms of the release clause are being kept under wraps as Bournemouth want to keep hold of their star man as long as possible.
Sure they are.
How do you keep a release clause under wraps? Like,
Well, I know.
You have a Christmas cracker, and
you-
then they all open it.
Well, the
and
Nottingham
release
Forest
it.
chairman certainly thinks there's a way it should be, otherwise all hell will break loose. Can you see?
To be fair.
It's difficult to say what LFC's MO is after the summer we've just been through to an extent, Sean. I mean, I'm going to imagine Semenyo signed a contract and surprised people last summer. He signed a new contract at Bournemouth. So you would think that the release clause isn't going to be 130 million. I think there have been some rumours around it maybe being around the 75, 80 million mark. Can you see Liverpool, it being Liverpool's MO, to look to trigger that as soon as January, if the player was willing? It's one thing us wanting it to happen, right? I always want more footballers, but can you see it as being an LFC mode of thing to do, even given that we're in strange times?
I think it depends probably more on what's going on internally at Liverpool and how the forward options are looking, because I'd be stunned if between now and the window opening you don't see, I'd be very disappointed if you don't see Mo, Alexander Isak, Hugo Ekitike on the left and that front 3. And if that really works, then you might go, well, you can leave that till the summer and maybe look at Cody Gakpo being sold and Semenyo being the Gakpo replacement in that sense. Whereas if you have a look at that and it doesn't quite work, or we have some injuries there, or there's a real necessity.
But sitting where we are now, do you think thoughts are turning to this being a live thing that Liverpool should consider for January?
I think consider, yeah, but I think really unless the player created enough noise that Bournemouth felt that, and there's enough of a tiny gap between what you're getting for in January and what you're getting for at the end of the season. The other issue is that dressing room like culture and the feel around the place, it's even for a manager, it's almost impossible to always put your finger on. It's almost like magic, the bond that you have in there, and whether you're selling someone or bringing someone in, it can just disrupt things that little bit. And if you bring someone in without moving someone out, someone is getting less game time. And I know this sounds ridiculous. Liverpool have got a job to do in winning games, but in a workplace, that doesn't just involve that individual. It involves his mates. It involves the people.
We have history for this, though.
So, we do.
When we brought Luis Diaz in January 22, it created a bit of a logjam.
It was.
We had 7 at times.
You had the situation with some of them knowing they were on the way out probably that summer. They were able to tactically move Sadio Mane into the middle because of the situation with Firmino then, and it worked really well. So, look, from my perspective as a fan, yeah, of course. Look, if he's here now, he plays Sunday for me. Like,
yes,
that's
the answer. Maybe
the point to make is that he's demonstrated he can play both sides. So
Yeah.
being able to play both sides helps. It helps in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. Being able to play both sides really, really helps. I think Liverpool are going to buy 2 more final third players in the next 2 windows. And if Semenyo comes in now, let's say now, 1st of January, 15th of January, 3rd, if Semenyo comes in January, he's one of the next 2. I think Liverpool will buy 2. I think there was the odd Morgan Rogers noise that just hit last week of the window, where suddenly there was a lot of chat that Liverpool might be interested in Rogers. Rogers is a really interesting player, and that you could argue he can play, call it number 10 or most advanced 8. left, right, and I would argue he could probably do a job for you centre forward if you wanted to sort of drop one in and false nine.
Is he quick? Rodgers?
Yes, he is, and he's very powerful, and he can carry the ball, and that's the thing he does, and he's very good in the penalty area, gets his head up and picks out passes. So I think that Rodgers was interesting. I think Semenyo, I suspect Liverpool's ideal world is one of Rodgers or Semenyo because of the versatility. And then I suspect, at some point next summer, Liverpool will be linked strongly to someone like Olise. I suspect that that's very, very possible. And then, I think that I think Liverpool will be looking at two others in the next two transfer windows. One will be another midfielder and one will be a defender. But my point here is that on Semenyo, I think he's as live a runner and rider as anyone else in terms of coming in and being able to add to that attacking shape.
Well, I mean, linked to this conversation is well, it shouldn't really be a conversation, but it has been mentioned in dispatches, so I'm going to mention it. Galatasaray have interest in Mohamed Salah. The report said Galatasaray are plotting a move to sign the 33-year-old winger when he eventually leaves Liverpool, and could even explore a deal for the Egyptian international as early as January, Phil. That sounds fanciful, to put it mildly. I suppose it only enters the conversation because for the first time, even though I don't disagree with Neil's view that Salah feels like, I think the reason he's got his new contract is that back at base, Liverpool's analysts have said he is a freak of nature in terms of his fitness and his potential for longevity, and you can class him with Ronaldo and Messi as a player who can deliver for you at an elite first team level, even as late as the age of 35, 36. But that's not a guarantee, and they will be having discussions thinking, what if this is Mohamed Salah's last season? Do you think they would go as far as thinking it would be the worst idea to take some money for him? I don't think as early as January, but by next summer.
I mean, you could see it. I think the January thing sort of falls apart with the fact that AFCON. That just doesn't make a great deal of sense anyway, because he would basically, that effectively means December when you think about it, doesn't it? It would mean he'd basically leave in 2 months, which is just doesn't really it doesn't stand up to much scrutiny, I don't think.
No.
I think, I think there's a world where he leaves at the end of his contract. I think there's a world where he leaves next summer. I think anything is on the table for him. They can, I think a lot of it, there was a lot of talk last year, like we have to renew this. And it was almost like a psychological thing in terms of maybe not placating people, but in terms of it was a very hard argument to have to let Mohamed Salah leave on a free last summer, let's be honest. Even if he's terrible this season, and you have to have lived him being terrible this season,
I think
you still couldn't have made the argument.
I think with the 3 contracts up for grabs, we had to win 2 of the 3 of those ones.
That's exactly my point. It's how he plays is almost like irrelevant to whether that decision had to be made or not. I'm not saying we made the wrong decision. That's not what I'm
also,
saying.
there's something to just
do it.
Also, although he has been given a lot of money, I'm not sure if it's 350 or 400 grand a week for 2 years. The total spend there isn't a fortune in the sense that you didn't have to spend 60 million to re-sign.
Exactly.
So it isn't that big a gamble.
No, I mean, what sort of mean is in terms of you had to do it, but it doesn't mean that you have to stick with it. You don't have to give someone a contract and then go, right, well, we have to keep this player until he's 35 years of age, and that's the end of that. You don't have to do that. Things evolve, things change. You can look at it and go, well, the best thing for the club now is to move him on, and it might well be that that's the case. It might well be that he suddenly explodes over the next 2 months. He goes into AFCON having scored 8, 9, 10 games in a row, looks brilliant. Then he comes back and fires Liverpool to a league title, and then you get another season out of him and go, excellent. There's so many things can change, and just got to adapt to circumstance.
I think one of the things that Salah needs to see is he needs to see what we need to see and what he needs to get the benefits of, to the point being maybe before that side has a more particular plan for him. And there's a couple of things. One is, what does it look like for Mo Salah if all of a sudden Alexander Isak scored 7 and 4 and Florian Wirtz has assisted 3 of those? All of a sudden then a side's setting up against Liverpool and going, let's not worry about that fella too much, because there's all hell breaking loose in this area of the pitch, and then all of a sudden it might be there in the next run of games you're like, oh, Salah's just scored 5 and 3 there, and looks in inverted commas himself. I think that's been, and I think one of the reasons why actually I think Ekitike has been able to find a little bit of space, especially prior to the mad second yellow card, is that opposition sides basically do have a Salah plan. There's players who get around him and all of those bits and pieces. So I think that's the most important thing, really. Liverpool won't be making any rash decisions where Salah's concerned. Salah won't want any rash decisions being made. He'll still have the same ambitions, which is, I think he'll look at his time at Liverpool and think he's 1 league title and 1 European Cup down in terms of medal haul. So that's what I'm expecting.
We need to get stuck into some centre-half chat, but first I need to tell you about the imminent Anfield Wrap live tour. We're in London on Thursday the 13th of November, Friday the 14th of November, Cardiff, first time ever in Wales, you lucky Welsh people. Sunday the 16th of November in Glasgow, and the Scottish tour continues the following night in Edinburgh. Neil, you excited?
I'm excited. Well, what we do, go down, have a fantastic night, loads of stuff getting stuck into the Reds, and looking back over the last sort of 10 years or so, and some Anfield Wrap secrets and bits and pieces. So, really looking forward to the whole thing. Really, it's hard to get from Cardiff to Glasgow. I'll tell you that. It's far harder than you think.
In Liverpool, it's a mission.
It is a mission.
Limited tickets are available at theanfieldwrap.com/tour live.
Glasgow being west of Cardiff's also mad, isn't it?
Yep, when you've got
Is it?
Yeah. So is Edinburgh.
Jeez, you live and learn, don't you, Phil? That you could be lying. I'd love it if you started lying about things like this.
Yeah.
No one would check. And people make fools of themselves in polite company at later dates.
Yeah.
Make that a new thing for Phil. Your third act will be about lying
Edinburgh,
about facts.
I've now doubted myself on the Edinburgh one. Glasgow definitely.
You built this heritage of credibility about facts.
See who on Twitter in positions of power then start repeating that line.
Betting markets in chaos across the world. Phil,
Copenhagen east of Sydney.
totally erroneous data enters the market. Should we talk about centre-halves?
Go on.
This Guehi thing, Sean, I mean, it's weird. We on the cusp of getting the boy. Within seconds, he's grabbed back away from us by Glasner and his hapless chairman. Who was in the gym all day or something, or in a Pilates class on transfer deadline day. We are where we are. You feel that, much has been said about Guehi's professionalism and that he knuckled down, he's the club captain, he wasn't going to make a song and dance, he's the anti-Isak in the minds of the media. But I can't help but feel that that Mark Guehi would have said to the powers that be at Palace the day after they ruined his dream of playing for Liverpool, fine, I'm your model professional captain, I'm going to knuckle down and you're going to see the best of me. Come January the 31st, you better do me a solid, because I'm going to be doing one for you, because I could kick up a fuss here, and I'd be within my rights, by the way, because you told me I was going. I even did some bloody media saying I was going. You were the guys who told me I was going. So it's not like Isak at all, where they put up all the obstacles. They didn't put up obstacles until the last minute, if truth be told. So he's within his rights to say, you owe me one. Now, I know there's been lots of quasi-briefings from the Liverpool end that Liverpool are not interested in paying dough for this player in January. I don't believe that, and we don't know what's going to happen between now and then in terms of further injuries to centre-halves. I think there is an amount of money that Liverpool will pay, and I think they're expecting Guehi to be pointing his fingers in the chest of the powers that be at Palace to say, I want you to let me go for a reasonable money in January. That's my belief anyway.
Yeah, from Liverpool's point of view, they'd be negligent if they were briefing anything else. You don't go to view a house, do you, and go, we've got loads more money than the listing price on this, and by the way, we really love it. Anyway, do you want to show us round? So Liverpool will be briefing to everyone to get the message out. Tough luck. Like, we've got the player in the summer, why would we waste money in January? I think the bigger problem is Glasner, in that for him, selfishly, he's played a bit of a blinder, in that the minute Man United press the button, he's out of there. And in the meantime, he needs to keep his reputation as high as it can. And it's like, I need to keep as much of this team together as possible, because they've got a great chance of going far, if not further than just far, in Europe.
But what would his chairman was more Camp Guehi than Camp Glasner, I suspect, right? He wanted the dough for PSR reasons. I'm talking about Guehi doing a deal with the manager. Do you think the chairman might have done a deal with the manager?
No, I think the manager and the player have probably done almost a similar type deal with each other on the basis that the problem, which I think will be the case in January, if Palace are still doing well in the league and doing well in Europe, the manager's going to go, under no circumstances are you leaving, because we've got an enormous opportunity from a selfish personal point of view for me to improve my CV. For Palace, they've got a chance to do something pretty historic, potentially, and for him, he's got the chance to do something historic as captain and walk away on a free. So I think it would take Palace to be knocked out of Europe, or for Glasner to leave, or for something pretty severe to happen for him to want to leave in January. That's my slight concern on it. I think Liverpool will be keen to do it, but I'm just wondering whether Glasner and the player.
Europe, I think if Glasner's still there, I think that Europe, if they're qualified through, but the league's not going so well, I think there's every chance that they just double down and they could let Guehi go and still prevail in the Conference League. And I think that might be a gamble worth taking if Liverpool put the money on the table. I think the problem is almost, ironic. I don't even know if it is ironic, but basically the higher Palace are in the league, the more Liverpool will have to pay. Because if you're Palace, there's every chance you could be looking at a league table when you're on played 19, when December the 30th hits. Everyone's looking at everyone else, and Palace are saying we're 4 points clear in fourth here. At which point, where is the actual delta of the amount of money it's worth selling your left-sided captain for? You would need to replace with the gamble and everything that comes with that, because the idea of Palace qualifying for the Champions League, the idea of Palace not even qualifying for the Champions League, but being in the position that Forest were last season. It's worth saying, if Forest had beat Chelsea, they would have qualified for the Champions League. If they'd have beat Chelsea, they'd have qualified for the Champions League. That was it. It was like a playoff, and they weren't good enough, and they weren't good enough for an extended period, Forest. But if you offered that right now to Parish, to Glasner, presuming he's still there, and therefore went to Parish, right, you get, because the Champions League money is so great, you get this quantum leap of cash, of opportunity, but you've got to knock back 12 million from Liverpool to Guehi and basically say to Liverpool, if you don't pay 30, you're not getting them. And Liverpool will then say, well, we're not paying 30 for someone who we can get for free in the summer, rightly, by the way. And then you end up in a situation where Palace will say, well, all right, we take that gamble. We'd run that all the way through. So that's what, ultimately, I think it's all on league placing. And
but this assumes it's a two-way process to an extent. It's about what cards the players hold.
I think that if they're in a position to, but also the player knows he is going for free, and therefore the transfer fee doesn't go to Palace. A sum of money comes to the player, and I just don't think. I think we've seen anyway with the psychology of the player. Ultimately, there's two things that are. It's not like Isak where he would have to kick up a fuss anyway next summer to also get out. He just goes for free. So if the player's not the sort who is psychologically minded to be a prick.
Sure.
And he knows anyway, I am not playing for the first game of 2026. I'm on the 1st of July, the first day of pre-season, I go into my new club. He knows that already. So I think I take your point, the player could, but I just don't think psychologically this player feels as though he's the sort who is going to be an absolute prick. And also, he can lift a European trophy.
Okay, I'll go to Phil on this one though. But I am reiterating my point is that I don't think it's, and this is why I'm focused on the player, I don't think it's necessarily what the player says to them on January the 31st. It's what he said to them on the 1st of September after they denied him his move, Phil. I think if it was human beings, just let's imagine it's human beings, one's had a dream move ripped from them, the others have had to look him in the eye and go, well, we've had to do it for extreme circumstances. Because it was only but for the fact that this one deal fell out of bed for Palace, so this deal would have happened. He's well within his rights to have sat down, fuming in his manager's office going, this wasn't on me, this, and you've ruined it for me. Liverpool could go and find somebody else for this, and you've absolutely ruined it for me. Now, I'm going to knuckle down, but man to man, manager to player, I want you to give me a promise here that I'm out in January. That gives you 3 more months. Now, the manager might say, look, I can't get that. I'm not going to contractually get that. But okay, I take your point. I hear what you say. I think I'm duty bound to you. I can very much, I'm not saying that did happen. I can very much imagine it did. And I don't think, even if Palace are flying there or there's this potential, that necessarily changes that moral, high ground that the player will have engendered into the situation on September the 1st will have disappeared. And I understand Palace's agenda, but they can't keep moving that goalpost because he's out of contract in the summer, but I can still imagine it being very difficult for them, regardless of what situation, to keep a player if he says, come on, that's it, game over, you promised me.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a real conflict of positions at Palace, didn't there, in terms of the manager and the chairman didn't necessarily agree. I think the chairman was like, we need to get this money in for him. The manager was like, I don't care about the money. I might not be here in a year's time. There's a world where the manager's not there in January. Like, let's say Ruben Amorim gets sacked and all of a sudden Manchester United decide he's their man. It's a different manager in January. Like, I'm not saying that will happen, but it's possible. Yeah. And all of a sudden it opens up and the chairman will go, well, I need that. We need that money in and we just make do. Like, there's so many moving parts to this one that it is just it's a bit complex in terms of what I think happens. I don't think Guehi appears the type to kick off. It feels like he sort of, he's a very religious person, isn't he? And it's just like he lives in a what will be because that's just how the world is directing me. So I don't think he's going to manipulate his own way.
Well, let me just put it, because this was said about the Isak situation, that Guehi was this moral paragon whereas Isak was the bad lad. But there was one key difference in their situations. Guehi had Palace's word near as damn it that he could leave, and they nearly let him. Isak had the when it came to the crunch, he had the opposite situation.
But there's also another difference, which is that one contract had a year to run and one had 4 years to run.
Of course, so there was an end game. Yeah. But in that particular summer, there was a difference of approach.
Yep, absolutely, because he knows that the worst case is he's there for another year and he gets a lot of money. Isak's was not remotely comparable, so the idea that
he's a year older, Isak, as well, so there's more of a desperation to get out.
The thing with Guehi is he wasn't in a terrible position. He knows that his worst case is he's captain in a team playing European football in the Premier League in a World Cup year. It's not. He wasn't in a terrible position. And then he can leave at the end of the contract. Obviously, he wasn't in a terrible position.
There's one other variable, and that is the fact that if this, obviously none of us want this, and I'm being silly here, but if Liverpool had said, "Tell you what, forget the fee, we'll give you Virgil van Dijk," Glasner's signing off on it all day long. The key isn't any of this. I think the key is he didn't have a replacement. That Glasner was like, "I'm excited by the replacement." So the issue that Palace might have,
isn't it?
Oh yeah, but there's the Dougie Friedman thing and everything going on at Palace. But the key thing is Palace have got to have a succession plan at least for next summer. So the question is, at board level, does that impact the quality of replacement if they don't sell him in January? Now that's where more pressure might come on Glasner, where they go, listen, you didn't want to get rid of him because you didn't have a replacement. We can't buy a good replacement in the summer unless we get Champions League qualification. You might be off. If we sell him for X, we've actually got a deal lined up for player Y.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
So let's just try and pick a number that gets the player out.
Get happy with it.
The problem I think Liverpool are going to have, let's assume Palace stand firm against the player saying he wants out, and he may not want out, but let's assume that they do stand firm against that, saying it's about money now. Because I think the chairman will say to his manager, I'm sorry, let's reductio ad absurdum. Liverpool come back with 35 million again in January, which they won't, which is what they were going to pay in the summer. The chairman is going to go to Glasner, you can fuck off, you can quit on me. 35 million with just 3 months left or 4 months left is money we are going to take. But it's not going to be that. And Liverpool are intimating they want to pay nothing. But I think their negotiating stance that they want to pay nothing means they'd love to be able to blag Guehi out of Palace for 10 million. Now, Palace don't expect to get 35. I'm trying to get to a number here, Neil, which is the number that is enough to get Parish motivated and say, Glasner, you've had your fun. I worked with you in August, but now we're going to get some dough for this. Where's the sweet spot number for you?
10 points.
10 points?
If they're 10 points off fourth.
The 10 points off fourth, of course, that, yeah.
That's your moving, but if they're 10 points off fourth, if we look at that and then it comes into the 1st of January, Guehi is still eager to move, even if they're doing really well in the Champions League. I think you're in a position.
What about fifth?
I think if you're, fifth, we don't know if fifth will happen. You can't have any guarantees off fifth, not least because, as you know, if Liverpool, as an example, Liverpool don't do that well in Europe, Forest aren't doing that well in Europe, it's all done with an algorithm, and at the minute the English sides aren't necessarily doing quite as well as I'm sure the other English sides would like them to do, ironically, so far, and we'll have a little look at that, but let's just sort of allow it to be fourth for now, and we'll have a sense of the fifth thing getting closer to. I think if it's 10 points, I think that they take any 8-figure fee for them. At that point, and they say this is the situation that we've ended up in, and we're going to roll with the punches. And from Guehi's point,
if they're marooned in mid-table,
well, I think 10 points could be that they're still 6th or 7th at that stage. You know, I think we're going to see by the time we get to Christmas some combination of Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City, possibly all three being over the hill and far away, and then it becomes a situation where whether or not what are Chelsea up to. What are Spurs up to? Especially if it's Chelsea or Spurs. If it's 7 points, if Palace
Newcastle recovered.
If Palace were 5th, 7 points behind Bournemouth, they might go, well, it's Bournemouth. But if Palace are 5th, 7 points behind Chelsea, they might just look at it and go, well, we're not turning that round.
Well, the other thing is Palace might, for all we know, Palace have identified a centre-half in Europe for £30 million that they think they can flip for 60, 70. And they'll be going at sporting director, scout level, board level. We cannot miss out on that. So any money we get towards that 30 helps, but for all we know,
and this lad can also help us win the Conference League right now.
Yeah, but they might have identified someone on a free.
Yeah.
So then they might take the other view of what doesn't matter.
And there are lots.
I think you're right. This is the secret. This is the secret and the opportunity cost of Palace. when September the 1st happened, the window slammed shut, Palace had to send their scouting team out into Europe again and go, please, for God's sake, give us a contingency for January. Okay, I think we'll wrap it there. What a comeback from the gutter. Well, me and Neil are going to into talks over when the next one will be, but I think it'll be sooner than you think.